But no, look, it's short notice because the story kind of came round overnight from mainstream media. And I note also our news feed from ZB today saying, Winston could be back. Well, only a couple of days late because we said that here on the platform a while back. David Seymour has ruled out. Well, what has he ruled out? Best way to find out what someone said or done is to talk to them directly. David Seymour joins us now. Welcome to the platform, David. What is your position on Mr. Peters? Were he to rise like Lazarus and be back in Parliament?
Well, first of all, I think we need to stop the speculation. It's feeding itself. The reality is no poll says he's got a chance, and why would you trust him when he's had so many chances? In fact, he created the problem we've got now. I hope you won't mind me saying this on the platform, but I saw a meme the other day that said it all started with a handshake, had a picture of him and Jacinda, and said, don't forget who...
Yeah, but he was out at 2020. He was out at 2020. I don't know how far back you want to go, David. He had nothing to do post-2020 with the win of Labor, being over 50% and getting a majority in 2020. Winston wasn't even on the field, mate.
Well, he was there when they voted for the Zero Carbon Act. He was there when they voted to rush those gun laws through, and he was there voting for the COVID-19 Public Health Response Act, which allowed the mandate. So, if you want to play that game, you can. But at the end of the day, you've got someone that you can't trust, is selling themselves as the solution to the problems that they made possible, and to try and say, I only caused the first 3 years of a nightmare New Zealand suffered. Sorry, for me, that's not good enough.
All right, that's not good enough, David, but the fact is, and despite your insistence to the contrary, people who analyse polls say this far out from polling day to be polling where he is creates the likelihood, not the certainty, or the possibility that New Zealand First will indeed be in the next Parliament and might, if a whole lot of other things line up, be in a position to get the centre-right over the line. Surely in those circumstances, your animus towards Mr. Peters and New Zealand First would not override your desire for a change of government.
Well, first of all, there you go again, and that's the problem with the media hyping this thing. The truth is that you've got someone you can't trust.
No, David, stop just throwing shade at him. You know what you know what the numbers are and what the facts are. I gave you a hypothetical. There is a possibility. I'm not calling it a likelihood. A possibility, if you analyse current polling, that Winston Peters will be back in Parliament and might hold a position that means that a centre-right coalition or change of government would require his support. Are you seriously telling me in those hypothetical circumstances you wouldn't seek that support or be part of a government bloc that looked to Mr. Peters for that support?
Just keep your hair on, Sean. Just a second ago you said it was a likelihood. Now you're saying it's not. And I just want to be
we
clear,
can play it back, David, if you want. I was careful with my words. But why not just answer the question?
Well, I'm going to. I just want to be really clear, and you're getting a hair on fire now. You did say likely.
No, I'm not. I'm just we're just keeping on track, David.
Okay. Well, now we've established that it's not likely. It's a theoretical possibility, and you want me to answer a hypothetical question. Look, it's pretty simple, right? You're not going to sit around a cabinet table. I think what would likely happen is that there'd be a coalition between ACT and National sitting around the cabinet table. And then the message for Winston Peters would be, well, mate, no one trusts you. We can't work with you. You said you're not going to put Labor into power, so why don't you just sit over there and abstain for 3 years and then get on with your life, whatever you want to do with it, because we don't want you around here, and if you vote with Labor to take down our government, that'll be the end of you. So I'd say probably what would happen in that scenario is he would end up sitting on the crossbenches with no power whatsoever, and the basic question I think you need to put to it is, well, you're not going to go with Labor, but would you vote with Labor to bring down an ACT national government? Now, if that's his proposition, then I think for your listeners it's crystal clear. It's another reason why you shouldn't vote for the guy, because actually, what he's really saying is, I won't go with Labor, but maybe I might vote with them to bring down a government between ACT and National, or maybe I will play games and vote with Labor to stop ACT and National doing the things that are required to get this country to be, first of all, affordable, and that's going to require some serious fiscal reforms that New Zealanders probably jump up and down about. And it's going to require a major change in the way we do law and order, and it's going to require a repositioning of the treaty. Now, you just got to ask yourself, given this guy's track record, would you trust him to actually be helpful, or do you think he'll vote with Labor?
And I think that's a good answer, David, because what you're kind of telling us is that Winston has never before ruled out a major party. He's always sat there trying to be all things to all people. And I guess what you're telling us, well, he has, and he did this earlier this week or yesterday with me. He said no means no to Labor. And I guess you're calling his bluff. Well, if you're not going to support them, bringing us down would be supporting them, so we don't really need you. It's really a practical analysis of the position that he's espoused, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is the problem, right? He always plays both sides and lies to people and then goes the opposite way. Now he said he's not going to do that. Well, that's fine. We don't need you. Just sit over there.
Okay. But David, you would look at the party, you would look at Shane Jones, you would look at what they're campaigning on. A lot of it's very similar to you, which is, I suspect, why you guys are scrapping so badly, because you're after some of the same voters. He's on about co-governance. You're on about co-governance. He's on about law and order. You're on about law and order. He's on about wokeness. You're on about wokeness. And if we just put aside that you don't trust him and you don't like him personally, that's come out pretty clearly this morning, why not have 3 more MPs that share a policy platform that's similar to ACT's working with you, rather than just sitting on the sidelines?
Well, first of all, thank you for that political broadcast for New Zealand, first of all.
Hang on, David. You see, this is the thing. You really are quite bitchy about him, and I can't figure out why.
Well, you're just giving us a campaign message on their behalf, saying their policies are all the same. I guess now...
what I said was they appeared to be campaigning in the same areas and on the same issues with much the same attitude as you are. That's just observable fact, David.
Well, you're pretty keen to make the observation. So let's come back a step and say, well, what about Te Puapua? Well, they knew about it, they forgot to ask about it, and now they claim...
Yeah, none of which, I was going to stop you there, none of which answers my question.
No, what I'm pointing out is, while you want to make the point that they're somehow credible on the same
I don't.
issues,
I want to ask you a question and I want you to answer it. And all you can do is go back and bag New Zealand First and Winston Peters, which we get.
No. What I'm doing, Sean, is I'm correcting an interviewer who's making the arguments for another party and then putting a question on
I'm asking questions in context, David.
Okay, well, all of those assertions you made about their campaigning are not true. They're not credible on those issues. And if you want to...
I didn't say whether they were credible or not. I said that's what they're campaigning on.
Well, the point is that they're not credible. And ultimately, the fact is that these other MPs you talk about, do you really think that Shane Jones is credible? Someone that handed out $3 billion worth of money and got nothing. They spent $500 million in Northland trying to buy votes. Northlanders are too smart to vote for him, and it looks like from the polls that have leaked out, they won't vote for him again. What Northland could have had is a decent road. Now, I'm a Northlander. Yeah. That would have actually helped with Northland's economic development. So when you say that they're on the same page or that these MPs are useful, I'm sorry, Sean. You made
on the issues that I raised, David.
Well,
on the issues of co-governance, on the issues of law and order, on the issues of wokeness.
Well, Well, as we've said, they're not credible on that. And on the issues of law and order, I mean, who put Jacinda Ardern in power when they decided that their policy was going to be to reduce the prison population by 30%? New Zealand First put them in and signed up for that. So now we've got 40. Now, in fairness, Labor have actually exceeded the target. We've had a 44% reduction. And, of course, when you let criminals out of prison, what do you get? More crime. New Zealand First made that possible. We've got the Zero Carbon Act, which is doing huge damage to the cost of living. New Zealand First voted for that. We've got huge division thanks to vaccine mandates. New Zealand First voted for the the COVID-19 Public Health Response Act, which made those mandates legal. So, again and again, you like to say, they're campaigning on these issues, but whether it's He Puapua, whether it's law and order, whether it's COVID-19, they're not actually credible. And then you say, they're the same as us. Well, the ACT Party would have built a road to Northland, maybe, but we certainly wouldn't have sprayed around $3 billion of corporate welfare trying to buy votes. We're just not remotely similar, despite your attempt to make the case for them.
No, I'm not trying to make the case for them. Observable fact, it's what they're campaigning on. You say they have no credibility. That's up to voters to decide. I can see you're not going to resolve from this. What do you then say to Chris Luxon? Have you reached a similar position on this? You're just going to freeze the guy out if by chance he gets in, Winston?
Well, thank you. That's a better way to put it. Look, I think Chris Luxon's position is probably the right one, just to point out he's not going to get there. He's not as foolish as me to entertain hypothetical questions out of kindness to journalists like yourself. But nevertheless, I think Chris Luxon, when it comes down to it, is too principled to work with New Zealand First. I'm sure he would ask a simple question. Why do you do your fundraising through the New Zealand First Foundation? Why don't you just declare your donations like everybody else? And they say, there's nothing wrong with it. Well, why do you do it? Who's giving the money? Who are the business people that gave the money to the New Zealand First Foundation? And Winston didn't know anything about it. Well, here's a question.
Is there anything, to your knowledge, David, is there anything legally outstanding on all that yet?
Well, as I understand it, the SFO are appealing and it's going to go back before court. But here's the question you'd ask if you were forming a government. You'd say, okay, we know you've got a track record of having subsidiaries that raise money that then get channeled into your party or not. We don't really know where the money goes. And we don't know who's giving the money. We don't know where it's coming from. So if I'm going to be Prime Minister and Minister in my cabinet, how do I know that you're not getting payments through your foundation that might influence your decision-making as a minister? And, of course, the answer is, I promise I would never do that. Okay, sure. So tell me, why exactly do you have this foundation in the first place? Why can't you just declare your political donations like every other political party in Parliament? It's not that hard to do. ACT does it whenever we get a donation that needs to be declared because we're above board and on the level. And if you wonder why, I'm not going to work with this guy and I think he's despicable and I find it outrageous that you give so much time to him and so much oxygen. This is a person that doesn't deserve to be in any parliament, let alone the New Zealand Parliament. And it's honest just to tell people right up front, if you vote for him, we won't work for him. Work with him. He'll be off on the cross benches, up to nothing, being totally ineffective. Yeah. Which, if you think about it, is exactly what he was like with Labor when he went on holiday and fell asleep before the cameras. I mean, that's just the honest.
Okay, David, look, I'd like to thank you for, I don't have to ask you the question, is this bottom line? It pretty bloody clearly is. You have been completely unambiguous about you and your party's position on that, and that's kind of good going into, the sharp end of the campaign. We know exactly where you stand on the issue of New Zealand First. And, of course, it is still, a huge question mark over whether or not they make it or they get in. So I do thank you for your time this morning, and it's good. It's good to have an interview where we push each other a little. This is how it should be.
Well, Sean, I just challenge you to play the tape back and see if you said likely. But beyond that, I just also make the point that, you give your party vote to ACT, you're voting for real change. The exact arrangement doesn't matter so much. You're still putting those votes in the same pot to get the change there, and you're also putting in a vote to make sure that Winston Peters in New Zealand First will be sitting way out down the ends, and they won't have their hands near power, which they never should ever again.
I thank you for your time. That is David Seymour, the ACT Party. We got a bit testy, didn't he, Benny? A little bit of pushback, but no love. No love lost there whatsoever. And I've got a ton of texts from that. And boy, you really get the feeling that at a deep philosophical level, it isn't just not interested, there is animus there.